They say money changes people, but no one ever warns you how it might change the people around you. I didn't expect to inherit anything from Aunt Marilyn. She was a charming, stubborn recluse who collected oil paintings and unopened wine bottles like they were sacred relics. Growing up, she was the kind of relative who'd send you postcards from museums instead of birthday cards. Still, we had a bond. She used to say I had an accountant soul, which was oddly specific praise from an aging art collector. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years, and when the call came from her estate attorney, it felt surreal. $2.4 million. That's what I walked out of the firm's office with, figuratively speaking. The paperwork was signed, the funds were being transferred, and just like that, I was financially reborn. But instead of driving straight to the bank or celebrating with a glass of something overpriced, I went home. I think part of me hoped Vanessa would be there so I could share the news. Maybe we'd toast in the kitchen with whatever bottle we had lying around. I imagined her smiling, wrapping her arms around me, telling me how proud she was. That's not what happened. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that hums beneath your skin and makes you feel like you missed something important. I put the folder with the estate documents down on the counter and took a long look around our kitchen, the same kitchen we'd remodeled last year when Vanessa decided she wanted a cleaner aesthetic. It was all white marble and matte black fixtures now. Cold, in a way. Impersonal. I called out for her, but no answer. Her car was in the driveway, so she had to be around. Maybe she was upstairs. Or out for a walk. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter, letting the silence settle in. That's when I noticed her phone. It was plugged into the charger by the stove, unusual. Vanessa was glued to that thing most days. She never went anywhere without it, not even into the bathroom. Leaving it behind was out of character. A minute later, the front door opened and there she was, breezing in like she was late for a red carpet. She wore a black wrap dress I didn't recognize, with heels I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was freshly done, makeup immaculate. She looked incredible. And unfamiliar. I blinked. Wow. You're dressed up. She paused at the door, pulling her coat around her. Work dinner. I told you about it. She hadn't. I would have remembered. Still, I nodded. Right? Didn't realize it was formal. Vanessa barely looked at me as she crossed the kitchen and grabbed her purse from the couch. It's a client thing. Big donors. I need to be there. Where is it? Downtown, she said quickly, eyes darting toward the phone on the counter, which buzzed right on cue. I glanced at the screen. Not intentionally, but it was lit up. A text preview glowed there for a second. It was from a contact saved simply as A. No last name. No emoji. Just the letter. The message read, "Can't wait to see you." Last night was followed by a photo. A photo of Vanessa. She was leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. Her head tilted toward his like they were sharing a secret. His hand rested casually, too casually, on her waist. The background was dimly lit, probably a bar or restaurant. It looked in asterisk mate. Intentional. Like they weren't trying to hide anything. My stomach dropped. Vanessa snatched the phone from the counter before I could say anything. Seriously, she snapped. You're checking my messages now? I was still processing the image. I wasn't sure what to say. It lit up. I didn't. That's private, Clay. God. You've been paranoid lately. It's a colleague. From work. Who sends selfies like that to a coworker? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. And why just an initial? She rolled her eyes and turned toward the door. You're reading into nothing. Honestly, I'm getting tired of this energy. Maybe talk to someone. I opened my mouth, but she was already pulling on her coat. You need to stop imagining things, she added, slinging her purse over her shoulder. We're not going to turn every text into a crisis, okay? I don't have time for this tonight. And just like that, she walked out. I stood there, stunned, as the door shut behind her. The silence returned, but this time it felt heavier, more intrusive. I stared down at the folder again, $2.4 million, and suddenly it felt irrelevant. I couldn't stop seeing the image in my head. Her smile, the way she leaned into that man. The way she hadn't even looked surprised to see it on her phone. Paranoia. That's what she called it. But it didn't feel like paranoia. It felt like instinct. Like something just beneath the surface had finally poked its head out. The worst part? I couldn't even name what I felt, not yet. It wasn't anger. Not fully. It wasn't betrayal. Not entirely. It was something murkier. Something that made the air in the house feel off, like the walls knew something I didn't. That night, I sat on the back porch with a drink in my hand, the folder untouched beside me. I stared out at the yard, at the faint glow of our garden lights, wondering if I was losing it. Wondering if I was about to ruin everything over a picture I wasn't supposed to see. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Not with the photo. Not with Vanessa's reaction. Not with the way she'd barely asked about my day. She didn't even know about the money. About Aunt Marilyn. About the inheritance that had just changed our lives. I didn't get a chance to tell her. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to anymore. That night didn't end. It just blurred into the next day. I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Vanessa's side of the mattress stayed cold and untouched. Around 2 a.m. I checked her location on our shared iCloud, something I hadn't done before but suddenly felt justified. She was downtown, near a hotel. Maybe that's where the dinner was, I told myself. Maybe it was all innocent. But if it was, why was my stomach twisted into knots? The next morning I got up before her. She came in sometime around 3:30. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to start something before I had real answers. But watching her quietly sneak into the bathroom, removing her earrings like she was in someone else's home, I couldn't unsee the image from her phone. I kept remembering her face. That photo. The softness in her expression, like she belonged in that moment, like that man beside her wasn't a stranger at all. All day, I tried to act normal, but I felt like I was watching a play from the front row, already knowing how it ended. I knew something had changed. And it wasn't just the inheritance. In fact, when I finally told Vanessa about the $2.4 million, her reaction was off. That's the best way I can describe it. I told her over dinner 2 nights later at that little Italian place we used to love. I figured it might make her light up again, draw her back in. It didn't. She smiled, but not at me, at the idea of it. That's incredible, she said, swirling wine in her glass. I mean, it's about time something good happened to us, right? I nodded, waiting for her to grab my hand. Kiss me. Say, you deserve this, Clay. Instead, she pulled out her phone before the appetizer even arrived. Her first question wasn't, what are you going to do with it? Or how are you feeling? It was, do you know how much of it we can access now? I just stared at her. From that night on, I started keeping score, not intentionally, but because I couldn't help myself. My brain kept filing little details away, connecting them like push pins on a board. She'd started working late on Fridays. I remember because at first I joked about it. Event coordination after dark, I teased one night. What, are you booking haunted house weddings now? She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those late shifts kept happening. Sometimes Fridays, sometimes Saturdays. Once she claimed she was covering for a coworker who had a bachelorette party. Another time it was inventory checks. Her job never used to involve this much out-of-office activity. She worked events for corporate clients, conferences, charity galas. Most of it was daytime. Clean, scheduled. Now it was always vague. Client meeting. Just something at the venue. Then there was the gym. A luxury place downtown. Before that, Vanessa had always said, why pay to sweat indoors when I can walk in the park for free? That's the kind of person she was until about 4 months ago. Suddenly, she had a membership to a place with eucalyptus towels and a smoothie bar. At first, I was happy for her. I thought she was just doing something for herself. I even offered to join. She shut that down immediately. It's my quiet space, she said. She started going 4-5 times a week. Even Sundays. At weird hours. She claimed it was about discipline, that she was finally feeling motivated. But her routine didn't match the glow she came home with, smeared lipstick, perfect hair, the faintest trace of cologne I didn't own. Cologne. That was the next clue. Or maybe a bomb, really. One afternoon, I found a box in the trunk of her car when I went to grab the jumper cables. Expensive packaging. A name I didn't recognize, Orem Noir. Men's cologne. High-end. I thought maybe she got me something. I even smiled for a second, thinking maybe things were getting better. Then I asked her about it. Oh, that, she said casually, barely looking up from her laptop. It's a gift. For my brother. I froze. Your brother? I repeated. She nodded. Yeah. His birthday's next month. She doesn't have a brother. Not a stepbrother. Not a cousin she calls like a brother. Not anyone. But I didn't call her on it. I don't know why. Maybe because if I made her explain it, I'd see how easily she could lie to me. Maybe I just didn't want to hear her make it worse. Instead, I filed it away in the growing list of unexplainables. She started changing the passwords on her devices. I didn't even notice until one night I went to play music on our shared iPad and got locked out. She acted surprised, said it was probably an update glitch. Next day? Same thing with her laptop. Then her iCloud account. The joint account, though, that was still mine to see. And that's where things got undeniable. Every Saturday, for almost 3 months, there was a $500 ATM withdrawal. Always from the same downtown location. She never mentioned needing cash. Never asked to use it for anything. When I finally brought it up, just offhandedly, she said, "I've been setting some money aside for a surprise. You'll see." I smiled. I even kissed her on the forehead. But inside, I knew I wasn't going to like that surprise. And here's the part that messed with my head the most. It wasn't just the behavior. It was the way she looked at me or didn't. There was a time Vanessa used to light up when I walked into her room. She used to lean on me physically, like my presence made her feel steady. "Yeah?" She barely glanced up from her phone when I came home. Conversations felt like obligation. Her affection had become transactional, polite. She liked the money. She really did. Her mood perked up whenever it came up. She asked about the investment options. About whether I'd consider buying a lake house or taking a long vacation. Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she say, "I'm proud of you. You deserve this." I could have had a heart attack in the kitchen and she probably would have stepped over me on the way to a manicure appointment. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because I genuinely started to wonder what version of Vanessa I was living with. The woman I married was warm, sarcastic, sharp. We had slow mornings together. Sunday brunches. Inside jokes. A shared Google Calendar for everything down to who took the trash out. Yeah? I was sharing a house with someone who had walls around her thoughts. Who laughed more at her phone than she did with me. Who smelled like someone else. But still, I didn't confront her. Not directly. Instead, I made a folder on my computer titled Random. Inside it, I started keeping *TS. Statements. Notebooks with dates. I told myself it was just in case. In case I was wrong, in case I needed to apologize for thinking this way. In case there was a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I wasn't gathering proof for her. I was gathering proof for myself. Because when you love someone and they start to feel like a stranger, you don't want to trust your gut. You want to be wrong. But I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. And I had a feeling that whatever I'd seen so far, whatever I suspected, was only the beginning. They say when you look hard enough for the truth, you better be prepared to find it. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. After weeks of watching, wondering, collecting subtle signs like dried petals in a book, I finally hit the point where suspicion alone wasn't enough. I needed clarity. Not theories. Not guesses. I needed the kind of proof that couldn't be dismissed with a smirk or a gaslight apology. And so, I crossed a line I never thought I would. Vanessa had a laptop she used for work. Sleek, silver, locked up tighter than Fort Knox. One night, while she was showering after another suspicious networking dinner, I walked into her office. The laptop was still open, the screen dark. I tapped the spacebar and held my breath. To my shock, it didn't ask for a password. I don't know if she forgot to lock it or if she trusted I'd never look. Either way, I took it as a sign. Her cloud storage synced automatically. I clicked into the Photos app first, not because I expected anything explosive, but because that's where people slip up. It was organized neatly into albums, events, work samples, design ideas. And then I saw one titled Conference Suites. That's what she called it. I opened it. The first photo was a standard hotel room. Crisp white sheets, champagne on the nightstand. The kind of setup her company might use for a hospitality suite, I told myself. The next image? Vanessa. In a hotel bathroom mirror. Same black dress I'd seen the night she rushed out the door. Lips puckered in a half-smile, shoulder bare, hair swept to one side. Behind her, partially visible in the frame, was a man's reflection. He was shirtless. Holding a wine glass. That's when my chest started tightening. I backed out of the photo app and opened her email. I wasn't even thinking straight, just chasing the next breadcrumb. She was logged into a Gmail account I didn't recognize. The username was a nickname I hadn't heard in years, NessaV23. I clicked into the inbox and scrolled. Most of it was junk, subscriptions, event alerts, RSVPs. But then I found a chain of messages under the subject line, "Your favorite room is confirmed, Blackheart." There were 6 emails. All from the same hotel. Same room. Different dates. Spanning months. Attached to one was a receipt for a dinner charge to a corporate card, my corporate card. She'd used my business account to pay for a dinner for 2 at a luxury hotel restaurant. I knew the place. It had white tablecloths, live jazz, and a dress code. You don't go there for networking. You go there for romance. For secrecy. My name was on the bill. I felt like throwing the laptop across the room, but I didn't. I needed more. I Googled the hotel. It had an app for guests, room access, services, even digital security footage for corporate suites. She'd once boasted about how cutting-edge the place was when I asked why she liked it so much. I dug through her saved passwords and found the login. It worked. The app showed reservation history, dates, names, emails. Hers. There was also a media section. I clicked it. And there it was. Footage. Clean, wide-angle hallway surveillance. No audio? One clip from 2 Fridays ago showed her stepping off the elevator with the man from the mirror photo. Tall, dark hair, expensive watch. He had his hand on the small of her back. They weren't sneaking. They were gliding. Another clip showed them at the bar in the lobby. Toasting. Laughing. The final one hit the hardest. They entered suite 1913. Vanessa scanned the card. The man leaned in and whispered something against her neck as she smiled, leaned into him, and closed the door behind them. I stared at the screen long after the footage ended. That was the moment. The illusion died. Everything after that was noise. When she came home that night, smelling like vanilla and foreign cologne, claiming she'd been coordinating a nonprofit auction, I didn't say a word. I simply nodded, watched her remove her heels, and listened to her tell me how exhausted she was. She had no idea her entire narrative had collapsed. I waited until she went to bed and opened my laptop. Compiled the footage, downloaded the emails, backed up the photos. Made sure it was airtight. There was no room for doubt anymore. No benefit of the doubt. No more blaming myself for the distance between us. Vanessa had chosen this. Over and over. And now I had the kind of truth no one could talk their way out of. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not to file for divorce yet. Just to ask questions. To know what I could do with what I had. Turns out a betrayal of the scale, when paired with financial misconduct, doesn't play well in court. Especially not when it involves using your spouse's business account for romantic getaways. I asked the lawyer what I needed to gather. He said, honestly, you've already done most of the work. I didn't feel proud. I felt hollow. That night I looked at Vanessa differently. I watched her talk about her day like she hadn't just dismantled our marriage behind my back. She told me she might need to travel next month for an out-of-town expo. My skin crawled. I didn't react. I let her dig deeper. And she did. Over dinner, she casually mentioned she was finally feeling seen at work. That she was closer to some people than ever. She looked up at me with this gleam in her eye, like she was testing me, daring me to ask. I didn't. Instead, I asked if she wanted more wine. She smiled and said yes. But inside, I was already gone. There's something shattering about realizing the person you built your life with is capable of lying so thoroughly, so calmly, while eating the same food, sleeping in the same bed, sharing the same last name. It makes you question every shared memory. Every smile. Every kiss. Was it ever real? I didn't know anymore. I told myself I'd wait one more week before making a move. I wanted everything in place. Wanted her to have no idea what was coming. If she was going to strip our marriage down to secrets, then she could live in the tension of her own making a little longer. Let her believe I was still blind. Let her smile across the dinner table, thinking she was untouchable. Because soon the mask would drop. And she'd see that I was done being lied to. I've always believed in keeping things private, handling conflict behind closed doors, taking the high road, avoiding scenes. But something about the calm, practiced way Vanessa looked me in the eye while lying straight to my face, it changed that. Some betrayals don't deserve silence. A week after I uncovered the truth, I put the final piece of my plan into motion. I'd spent each day since collecting what my attorney referred to as strategic leverage, documentation, financial transactions, timelines, and most important of all, connections. You see, Vanessa's job wasn't some mom-and-pop wedding planning gig. She worked for a mid-size event firm with high-profile corporate contracts. Think keynote summits, luxury brand launches, city council dinners. Her position wasn't just managerial, it was forward-facing. And as someone who managed event budgets, contracts, and vendor relationships, she had a fiduciary obligation to act ethically. She didn't. The moment she used my company card for a romantic dinner at that hotel, she crossed more than a personal line, she violated professional ethics. What she probably didn't expect was that the firm's biggest client was also on my financial advisory roster. One call, and I had an in. I reached out discreetly to a board member. We met for lunch at a quiet corner table at a country club, one of those places with no menus and too many rules. I laid out what I had. He didn't say much, just nodded slowly while scanning the packet of evidence I'd handed him. His expression barely changed, but the message was clear, this wasn't going away quietly. What do you want us to do? He finally asked. Nothing illegal, I said. Just transparency. Let the company decide how to handle one of its public representatives knowingly abusing financial trust. He nodded again. Understood. It took exactly 5 days. Vanessa had a live-streamed presentation scheduled that week, a quarterly innovation update for stakeholders meant to showcase new event technology integrations and venue partnerships. She was listed as the keynote speaker. It was going to be her moment. The firm was hyping it on LinkedIn, Instagram, even running local press coverage about it. And I let her prep in peace. She spent the whole morning of the event pacing around the house, rehearsing lines in the mirror. I stood in the hallway watching her silently recite words like growth, vision, transparency. The irony nearly made me laugh. She left around 10 a.m. wearing a cobalt blue blazer and heels I bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. "Wish me luck," she called over her shoulder. I waved from the kitchen and told her she'd K*LL it. Then I poured a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. At noon, the live stream began. I watched her step onto the stage with practiced poise, smile wide, voice clear. She welcomed the virtual audience, thanked the stakeholders, and began walking through the slides. That's when it happened. At exactly 12:09 p.m., the screen behind her shifted. No warning. No technical glitch. Just a deliberate replacement of her slide deck with a document folder titled Conflicts of Interest and Unauthorized Use of Funds, Internal Review Materials. She froze mid-sentence. The livestream audience, hundreds of viewers, including clients and board members, saw receipts scroll across the screen. Hotel bookings under her name. Duplicate vendor invoices. Transactions flagged as client dinners with date stamps matching the hotel surveillance. Photos. Footage. Everything. She stood there, blinking, still clutching the remote. Her voice wavered as she tried to speak. I think there's been a... But the feed muted. The stream cut to a company logo, followed by an automated message. "We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by." Except it wasn't a technical issue. The board had pulled the plug. I later learned that within 2 minutes of the footage going public, internal compliance flagged her access credentials and locked her out of the system. Her phone was confiscated before she could leave the venue. The HR lead, someone I'd quietly informed, was waiting for her offstage. They didn't yell. They didn't argue. They simply handed her a termination letter and escorted her out the side door. She came home that evening pale and silent. She walked into the house, tossed her shoes aside, and sat on the edge of the couch without saying a word. I stayed at the kitchen table, watching her like I was watching the end of a long, badly written movie. "You knew," she said after a long pause. Not a question. A realization. I didn't say anything. "I should have seen it coming," she added, her voice small. "You're not the type to scream. You're the type to wait." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're the type who gambles everything and thinks no one's watching." She looked at me then. Really looked. There was no anger. No denial. Just fatigue. Like she had finally run out of stories to tell. "What now?" she asked. I stood up and walked over to her. I didn't sit beside her. I didn't reach out. I simply looked down and said, "Now you live with the consequences. The same way I lived with the silence while you erased our marriage one lie at a time." She didn't reply. Just nodded once, like a prisoner accepting the verdict. I left her sitting there and went to bed. Later that night, I opened a new folder on my desktop. It was labeled simply, Next Steps. The day she filed was the day I knew she hadn't learned a damn thing. I got the notice 2 weeks after her termination. A thick envelope dropped in my mailbox, stamped with the seal of the King County Courthouse. Inside, Vanessa's formal petition for divorce. Not a surprise, I suppose. But what was surprising, no, infuriating, was the content. She wanted spousal support. Not just some transitional amount, either. She listed a monthly figure that could have paid a full-time mortgage on a waterfront condo. She also requested joint access to the inheritance. My inheritance from Aunt Marilyn, as part of marital assets. She even claimed emotional distress and reputational damage due to Clay's unauthorized disclosure of private information. I actually laughed out loud when I read that one. This woman. She torched our marriage, dragged my name into her affair, got caught defrauding both our finances and her employer, and now. She wanted sympathy from the legal system? It would have been hilarious if it weren't so damn insulting. My lawyer, Meredith, didn't laugh. She just leaned back in her chair, scanned the petition again, and said, "Good. This makes our job easier." We filed a countersuit immediately. Response, evidence package, and a motion to exclude the inheritance from division under Washington state's separate property laws. Meredith was surgical, calm, deadly efficient. She said it all came down to positioning. Show the court a pattern, not just a scandal. So we built the pattern. We highlighted the repeated ATM withdrawals, the use of my corporate credit card at hotels, the false claims on expense reports, the suspicious cash transfers from our joint account to her Venmo, which she then sent to someone named A.J. Kincaid. The same man from the hotel footage, whose real name, we later learned, was Alan Kincaid. He was no stranger to courtrooms. Alan had a quiet little resume of civil suits against him, including one from a former business partner who claimed Alan ran off with a sizable investment from a defunct startup. Vanessa had tied herself to a con artist, and now wanted the courts to clean up the mess. The hearing came faster than expected. Her lawyer, a younger guy named Trevor with slick hair and too many binders, tried to set the tone by opening with a plea for compassion and context. He painted Vanessa as a neglected spouse, said I'd become emotionally unavailable and obsessively controlling after receiving the inheritance. Meredith just handed over the file. It was thick, labeled with tabs. Every tab opened to a different kind of betrayal: financial misappropriation, adultery, false claims, **TS, emails, calendar overlays, security footage stills. We didn't even need to embellish. The facts spoke for themselves. When the judge asked about the inheritance, Trevor claimed it had been integrated into the couple's future plans. Meredith countered with Aunt Marilyn's will, which stated explicitly that the estate was for me alone. She even cited our prenup, a dusty old document Vanessa and I had signed on a whim 10 years ago that, ironically, excluded inheritance from asset division. We never thought we'd need it. The real breaking point came during testimony. Vanessa was sworn in. She wore a modest gray dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup except a thin layer of concealer. She tried to sound composed, measured, like someone who had just made some unfortunate choices but didn't deserve punishment. Meredith questioned her gently at first. Ms. Turner, would you describe your relationship with Mr. Kincaid as strictly professional? Yes. Meredith nodded and projected an image onto the courtroom screen. It was a frame from the hotel security footage. Vanessa and Alan stepping into Suite 1913, his hand firmly on her lower back. Vanessa blinked. That was a work thing. We were reviewing the space for a... Did the hotel receipt for that night list one guest or two? She paused. 2. Meredith let the silence stretch. Then she clicked to the next image. An email from Vanessa to Alan, labeled, "Can't wait for next time Blackheart. Game over." After that, the judge's demeanor shifted. He stopped giving her lawyer the benefit of the doubt. He interrupted Trevor's objections. By the end of the session, it was clear we weren't just winning, we were winning by a mile. The ruling came down 2 weeks later. The court declared the inheritance separate property, not subject to division. Vanessa's request for spousal support was denied on the grounds of bad faith conduct and willful financial deception. The judge referenced extensive and intentional breaches of trust as justification for ruling in my favor. But it didn't end there. Alan's background triggered something deeper. The court referred the matter to a financial crimes investigator, citing potential fraud in the way Vanessa funneled funds to him during her employment. Her firm reopened their internal audit, and I heard through the grapevine that a formal complaint had been filed with the Washington State Board of Ethics. She didn't just lose the case. She lost the game entirely. Vanessa tried to reach out once after the ruling. A short email, no subject line, just 2 sentences. I didn't mean to destroy everything. I thought maybe we could at least talk. I didn't respond. I saved the message, printed it, and filed it in the same binder where I kept everything else. Then I blocked her email. Closed that chapter. I can't pretend I didn't hurt. I did. A lot. But watching her walk out of that courtroom without a single thing she came for, without my money, without sympathy, without even a sliver of public redemption, there was a quiet satisfaction in that. Not vengeance. Not gloating. Just justice. She thought she could manipulate the system the way she manipulated me. But the truth has a way of surviving the performance. And in the end, it spoke louder than either of us ever could. 3 months passed. Just when I thought I could finally breathe, Vanessa resurfaced. It started with a message from a former colleague. Vanessa had shown up at the launch of my new nonprofit foundation. I hadn't invited her. She hadn't RSVP'd. But there she was, dressed like she belonged, shaking hands and smiling for photos like nothing had happened. I watched from a distance, stunned. Afterward, she cornered me in the hallway. "I've changed," she said. "What happened? It wasn't me. I want to make things right." I stared at her. "You didn't just make a mistake, Vanessa. You ran an operation." She didn't flinch, just smiled and walked away like this was a negotiation.